Hi and welcome. This is Katie Carduan again, and this is my weekly Lunch and Unlearn session of 15 minutes. And in this season, we are going to focus on workshops and how to unlearn bad workshop tactics in general. And today's topic is about the preparational work. So even though I might refer to some other things along the way, I will mainly keep and focus eye on the preparational steps. And if you are joining this live, feel free to add a comment. I'll be able to either respond directly or in the aftermath of this live stream. And also, if you take part of the replay, feel free to reach out and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So with that, let's kick this off. And just to set the scene, I'm going to share with you a very short and simple presentation deck just to help you reflect about your own situation as a workshop facilitator or as a workshop participant, or maybe you are the sponsor, or maybe you are the workshop decider. Who knows which role you're playing, and maybe you will vary these roles along the way, which I do. I sometimes facilitate, I sometimes participate, and I learn a lot from attending workshops. And over the years, I've been in a position to reflect about what makes a workshop great and what makes it not so great. And as I go along, I discuss this with my peers, and we learn together on how to avoid the worst missteps and really unlearn some bad behaviors that we have brought from the past. So with that, let's get this moving. And why this is important is, of course, that workshops, to me, is a very effective way of getting things done in a very engaging way if it's done correctly. And sometimes workshops has a bad association to it. Some people have bad experiences, and I really think it's important to learn from those mistakes and turn this into something that could be really beneficial, really useful, opening up the innovative powers and the creativity that typically come out as synergies when you bring different minded people together, if it is facilitated in the correct way. So this is why it's important. And as we go through this series, even though we're going to focus on preparations today, I might pop into some of the executional part and follow-up parts as well. But just so you know, for the upcoming episodes, there will be more deep dive into both execution and the results and follow-up as part of this series. When we're talking about unlearning, it's important to understand that we need to make a conscious decision about addressing something that is not serving us anymore. And in this case, it means that we are focusing first on, in order to crack the code, to understand the facts. What are the facts that we need to address? And then we can change our perspective and choose that carefully. And then, of course, in order to make this shift in behavior, we need to practice on new strategies. It takes some time to make it or to adapt to new strategies, and we need to practice that. So this is the cracking the code, very simplistic method that I always refer to in terms of unlearning in general. And when it comes to workshops, well, there are lots of things to unlearn, and I'll share some examples with you from my recent experiences as well. Let's dive into the focus of today, the preparational work. First of all, in order to avoid those severe mistakes in the beginning, it pays off to really put some time into your prep work. And what I would love you to do is to make set aside some time to reflect about these questions. So first of all, who are the key stakeholders? I mentioned the sponsor, I mentioned the decider, and I mentioned the participants. Who are they and what are their expectations? And if you join the previous live stream session, I talked about the tangible and the intangible results that people tend to bring with them into a workshop. And it's your job as a facilitator to unlock that and to understand as much as possible about that before you get started, because that will, of course, make your job much easier. So typically, the things you need to address in advance is to talk to each and one of the key people, the key stakeholders, and understand what are their expectations in terms of what they want to come out of this workshop. What is it that they envision? What would be a great workshop experience for them? And that could be a very tangible result, like a policy or a strategy, or maybe a product or a design. But also, there could be other and less tangible results that they are looking for. That could be improved teamwork, that could be improved relationships, could be merging two cultures and learning more about your peers. So there are a number of things that is helpful that you can capture early in the prep work. And then you might ask, so how do you do that? Well, some of the questions you can ask quite directly. And what I do is that I always try to catch the key stakeholders early on before the workshop. I interview them one on one and allow them to share their expectations and to talk quite freely and ask open questions and not stare them too much, because there is a risk of me as a facilitator then steering them too much into a specific set of expectations that I have already defaulted to myself. So it's about opening up that space and really understanding what's important to them and why. And then, of course, there will be some things that you might not be able to ask directly about, that you can kind of sense it, and then you can maybe um, address certain things or include certain things in upcoming questions and prep work that will allow you to understand the more intangible expectations for results as well. So that would be my advice, that you're really focusing on understanding who they are, what's important to them, and ask questions and make sure that they are able to interact with you before the actual workshop. And the better your prep work here, I would claim the better you are in a pole position to kick it off on the day of the workshop. And the easier it will be to facilitate it towards the results that you're looking for with your stakeholders. Of course, you need to ask as well what has worked in the past and what hasn't worked in the past. And sometimes we tend to assume that they are used to running workshops or participating in workshops. My experience is that some people are really advanced and they have a lot of experience, and they tend to believe that the others also have the similar experience. Typically, it varies a lot, and it's important to investigate that a little bit so you get the right approach to that. And I would say that especially when you bring new people together, let's say there's a new leadership team, a new CEO, or maybe there are two teams being merged together to work together for the first time, there's likely a lot of different types of expectations and lessons learned from the past. So it's important to tap into that, to really understand what has worked for them and not. And when you have done that, you can also maybe directly or indirectly try to unfold some of the potential issues, some of the potential, I would say, traps or challenges that are underlying throughout the process. And when you gather all of this, when you do this prep work before the workshop, you have a great, fact sheet and a collection of insights that you can use when designing your workshop. Typically, some mistakes that I've done in the past and that I see that some other people do as well is that they focus too much on the sponsor, spend a lot of time with the sponsor, maybe the decider as well, a bit before the workshop. And then, based upon what I just shared, the participants might show up with a lot of other expectations and experiences. Sometimes even the sponsor thinks or believes that the decider is aligned with his or her own expectations, which might not be the case, which is why I always recommend to talk to them individually, so you're able to collect their individual input, listen into their experience, and really capture that. I do recall in the early days of my own facilitation career, I tended to have some typical favorite exercises or favorite tools that I would love to use because I knew they were helpful, I knew they were fun to work with, and that I kind of let that steer me into how I approached and talked to the participants beforehand. Instead of opening up and listen first before I design the agenda. And after some, I would say, disastrous events, I quickly learned that that was the right way to do it, to really open up into listening before you put too much effort into designing a great agenda with great exercises and tools and steering towards the expected outcomes. So that would be my clear advice to really make sure that you spend time with each and one. And if there are many people attending, let's say 20 or even 30 people or even more than that, of course, you might not be able to talk to each and one of them. But you need to fetch and capture the insights and the expectations and the representatives from the different groups inside that workshop community, so you're able to get a representative view of these very, very important expectations beforehand. Okay. I had another example as well. I had a situation once where I brought together a leadership team where the CEO was really new, and it wasn't clear who would have the new roles in the team in his new setting. So that created a lot of positioning and different behaviors that typically didn't serve the workshop too well. And I would have benefited a lot from talking to more of the stakeholders beforehand to understand that. So that could be built into some of the things we could work for as maybe more intangible results as well during the process. So again, it pays off to spend some time on preparation. And looking back, I think in general, when I look back now on my most recent workshops, I'm getting better at using more time proportionally in the prep work compared to the rest of the exercises and the follow-up as compared to in the past. So again, a lot of prep work often pays off because it will make the process so much smoother, and you will be so much well prepared, and you will also have some great ambassadors and people have been bought into your approach and your style before you get started. So that is my clear piece of advice in that sense. Okay, so these focus questions, I would strongly advise you to have a look at them and make up your mind before your next workshop what would be important to you to focus on yourself. And having said that, as always, I would love to share a challenge with you. And this time it's about the type of questions that you would like to ask your stakeholders before your next workshop. Based upon your experience, what is it that you would love to know before you have everyone in the same room on the workshop day itself? So think about that, and maybe you will come up with a list of 5 to 10 questions. That's typically how I do it myself. This brings me on to the next topic for next week, which is focusing then on the agendas. When we have been doing a great prep work, we have listened in to the different stakeholders and gathered expectations, then we are ready to start designing the actual workshop more in detail. And there are lots of traps and things we can unlearn here, which I will share more next week. So I hope you will join me again then for 15 more minutes of deep dive into agenda designs in workshops. As always, I would like to point you to a deeper and more comprehensive sequence of lessons learned and tips and ideas from my side. If you go to bit.ly/workshop hacks, you will find a 20-minute workshop insight session where you can deep dive more with me and get access to some of my most important questions that you can benefit from yourself. So I hope you will join me next week as well. And until then, have fun with this. Good luck with your workshops, and find a cup of coffee and join in to my workshop insight session. I think it will pay off. So good luck with that. And until then, take care. Bye.